All right, so I'm going to show you two different ways to solve this problem, a kind of a faster shortcut method, and then a slower, safer method. So we'll start with the slower method, and that one's going to use equations. So the equation here, of course, we want average speed, speed or velocity, essentially. And that's going to be velocity is equal to distance over time, right? And of course, in this case, the distance is 15 kilometers, 15 km over 20 minutes. And of course, this would give us units in kilometers per minute, which is not really what we want because our answers are in kilometers per hour, right? So we could do the math and then try and convert later. But what we could also do is we could just convert this bottom number into hours now, right? And so how would we do that? Well, I'm going to kind of speed this up a little bit. So instead of going through the math of it, essentially, what I'm going to say is 20 minutes is the same as 1/3 of an hour, right? And we kind of know that because 20 minutes, and there are 60 minutes in an hour, so 20 divided by 60, it's going to be 1/3, right? So this is kind of the same as, instead of saying 20 minutes, we can just say 15 kilometers traveled in 1/3 of an hour, right? So now our math is a little bit confusing. So how do we do 15 divided by 1/3? Well, one trick is that, of course, if you want to divide by a fraction, that's the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So what I mean by that is that 15 divided by 1/3 is the same thing as 15 times 3 over 1 times 3 over 1, which is just 15 times 3, and the answer is going to be 45, right? So velocity is equal to distance over time. The distance over time is 45 kilometers km per hour. And so, of course, the correct answer here is going to be C. Now, that's kind of the long way to do it, which is we use the equation to do it. And in general, on the MCAT, I strongly recommend, if you can find shortcuts, that you try and use those shortcuts, as long as you're confident, of course, in in the methods of those shortcuts. So I think a much safer, or a much faster method, I should say, is really to just look at this and say, we traveled 15 kilometers in 20 minutes. Well, how much would we have traveled in 40 minutes? Well, we would, of course, double, so that would be 30. In 40 minutes, we would have traveled 30 kilometers, right? And that means, of course, that in 60 minutes, we could add another 20. So 15, 30, 45, right? So let me write that out for you. 15 in 20 minutes. So that means we traveled 30 in 40 minutes. And that means we traveled 45 in 60 minutes, or in 1 hour. And so just kind of by doing that, and sometimes when I encounter something like this, I'll actually count it on my fingers. So I'll say 15 kilometers in 20 minutes, 30 in 40 minutes, and then 45 in 60 minutes. And I'll actually like count those on my finger just to kind of help me keep track of the number of times I added 15, right? So the correct answer here, of course, is going to be 45. And either way, we get the same answer, but one of these methods is a little bit faster, and I generally recommend, again, faster methods because they'll really save you time on easier questions to allow you to get to harder questions. So that's how I would recommend you approach this question, but again, you can always just fall back on equations if you can't really think of shortcuts. So correct answer here would be C.